Disclaimer. This video, in spite of its subject matter, has not been marked as for kids. This video is intended for a general audience, which the FTC and COPPA do allow, but YouTube is not providing. As such, any videos with this disclaimer will be marked as not for kids until YouTube makes a general audience option available. Enjoy the video.
Hello, gathered friends! Well, we've reached the point right before we get into the movies. And while I stick by the no recap rule, I should note a small detail I missed in the last episode before we get into everything. As you may recall, I said that there was no place in canon for Tahu to get into the Bohrok nest, get his mask knocked off, and have a Karana briefly put on his face. Well, as I edited the final few sections, I noticed that Tahu did have a brief moment where he was alone in a nest full of Bohrok. Admittedly, this occurred later than what spurred that rant, and the time frame of events doesn't gel with me that well, but if you want to use that as an area for that incident to occur, that's perfectly fine. Though speaking of canon, our books for today are Makuda's Revenge and Tales of the Masks. I'll admit, the anthology format of Tales of the Masks did bog down the book for me while reading it, to the point where it took 2 nights to binge read it instead of the usual 1, but it's got some content in there that I can appreciate. We also have the Bohrok Call Online animations, which told the saga we're about to read anyway, just with considerably more Jawa and Takua. Yeah, we'll get more into those two when we talk about Mask of Light, but for now, all you need to know is that those animations feature what is called the rebuilding at the end, when the Tauren transition from Mictauren to slightly bigger Chunguses, by the Turaga just taking them apart. It occurs to me that such a thing is kind of weird. Menok 2 also factors into this a bit, but some of its content bleeds into Mask of Light, if I remember correctly anyway, so we'll cover its content if we have to there. Anyway, let's roll out the theme song and get this party started. We begin where we left off in issue 8, after the Toa Nuva have completed their transformation, much to their collective surprise. In fact, Liwa is so surprised they took on Tahu's colors for at least 2 panels. The earthquake is still happening as rocks fall on them, but Tahu uses his Hau, now a Hau Nuva, to shield all of them, something they could never do before.
Honestly though, you should count your blessings that yours ever worked.
Anyway, the Toa combine the power of Pohatu's and Liwa's masks to propel them upwards, since a unique feature of the Kanohi Nuva is the ability to share mask powers like that, as they also demonstrate by using Anua's Pakari Nuva to shove some Taunuk deeper underground. Soon, the Toa exit the cave and declare that their new levels of power will help them protect the Matoran even better, officially declaring themselves Toa Nuva. We start out issue 9 with this. Okay, I don't mean to complain too much, what with this artwork being pretty fine, but compare that near perfect Hau from last issue's first page with, well, just look at it! Anyway, the Toa are practicing their newfound powers against each other. Naturally, Tahu and Kopaka go at it and they get to arguing, despite them having sorted out their issues before. I mean, yeah, they have new levels of power now, so maybe some slight attitude shifts might occur, but this feels more like character regression for them. Heck, it even continues into the books, and I just have to ask, why? None of the other Toa seem to be that aggressive towards each other after the transformation. Sure, they playfully bantered, but they weren't at each other's throats like Tahu and Kopaka are. Oh yeah, and Gali has been shifted back into the role of wanting the Toa to stick together, when all of the other Toa want to separate. What is with them going back to this sort of dynamic? The Toa have progressed since then, and for the better. Anyway, cut to a cave where some creatures are talking.
Then we are decided. Yes,
But what if the Toa should try to interfere? Can we succeed where the Rahi and Bohrok swarms have failed? We can. We must. The heart of the Toa power lies in their villages. Steal that heart, and they will be unable to stop us. They do not know we are here. They do not know why. And when they do, it will already be too late.
Why do you write that in English and not Matoran?
Cut to Takoro, where Tahu is surfing down a stream of lava.
And yes, I am very happy I just got to say that.
And Tarakavakama is setting up a tribute symbol to Tahu's power on the Suva they used to hold Tahu's extra masks. Every village on Motunui has one of these, such as Kokoro, where Matoro is guarding Kopaka's until a shadowy figure attacks him and steals the symbol. Meanwhile, Kopaka skis down Mount Ihu wondering if it was a bad idea for the Toa to split up like that, and if someone may have anticipated it. He's interrupted, however, when the ice bridge he was making fails him, and what's worse, his ice powers are straight up gone, leaving him in free fall. We open the next issue as Kopaka falls, but uses his ice blades to catch himself. Oddly, the art on this page makes it look like the artist just posed the toy as best they could, took a picture, and then traced it. It's not the last instance of that in the Bionicle comics, but it's the first one that I actively remember. Anyway, Kopaka's plight is not a unique one. The symbols of all 6 Toa Nuva, more properly referred to as Nuva symbols, were stolen from the Matoran villages, which has robbed the Toa Nuva of their elemental powers. And no, I'm not explaining where the Nuva symbols came from, it's complicated. Later, all 6 Toa have gathered into a part of Pawahi, basically the part of the desert that isn't Pokoro, having trailed the thieves there. The Toa wonder where the thieves might have gone, and they reveal themselves properly as the Bohrok Call. 6 specially enhanced Bohrok with a mission to free the Bohrok Queens. The Toa try to fight them, but only end up getting beaten up, such as Liwa being struck with Galak Call's magnetic abilities, Anua coming up against Power Call's plasma abilities, and Tahu's shield cracking against Nuvok Call's gravity abilities, leaving the rest to blast them with Tana Call's electricity, Korak Call's sonic power, and Levi Call's vacuum blast. I would question how, say, a regular Levi can be mutated to attain a vacuum blast, but I'm more distracted by the bottom panel where the Toa are getting blasted like they were in a Power Ranger season. You know, where the explosion happens behind them, and they take a very obvious jump forward in slow motion. Later, the Toa wake up from, I guess, being knocked out. The Bohrok Call have left them with a very obvious, stay out of our way message. Tahu wants to challenge them for the simple sin of hurting their pride, but Gali reminds him that the Call are looking for Kadak and Gadak, and if those two get free, the Bohrok swarms are back in full force, so they need to put the kibosh on that. Thus, they form 2 teams. Gali, Anua, and Pohatu will go back to the Bohrok nest and find out what actually happened to the Bohrok Queens, while the rest of them will see if they can at least slow the Call down. And Anua reminds everyone to keep an eye out for any Kanohi Nuva, since their mask powers are all they've got to fight the Call with. Yeah, the Kanohi Nuva are another complicated matter, so we'll just move on. And so the issue ends with the Toa proclaiming that the Bohrok Call will learn not to mess with them as a JoJo pose or something. By the way, a lot of leg miscoloring has been going on since Gray came into the mix. Anyway, the next issue opens up with heck yeah! That's right, Tahu is leading an entire army of Tanak here. Yeah, I glossed over this when the comic mentioned it, but without the Bohrok Queens to command them, the Bohrok are actually fairly easy to command around and stuff. Even to help repair all the damage they did to Motunui's villages. So Tahu, in an image that is inherently awesome, is leading an army of them against Nuvok Call, who just uses his gravity powers to send them safely up into orbit. And then prepares to make Tahu too heavy to interfere. Okay. Meanwhile, Kopaka, Gali, and Liwa have combined into a Toa Nuva Kaita to face Galak, Korak, and Levok Call, who combine into their own Kaita. At another part of the island, Anu and Pohatu use a reflective stone to reflect Tana Call's electricity back at him in order to capture his Karana Call, who tells him that the Bohrok Call have already found Gadak and Kadak. The Toa are doubtful of this naturally, but Taraga no Kama comes along with a Karana Call retrieved from another of the Bohrok Call. That basically explained where this squad came from. She also notes that the Bohrok have returned to the nest, so it's possible that the Bohrok Call actually did find the queens. They also find that Tanak Call has escaped during this conversation, having obviously been served a new Karana by a Bohrok Va. With this information, the Toa gather together and go down into the cave where the Bohrok Queens were trapped, hot on the heels of the Bohrok Call. And they find the Bohrok Call battling the Exo-Toa suits, who can apparently fight without anyone piloting them. And I'll admit, it is a bit disappointing that they didn't let the Toa Nuva use the Exo-Toa one more time, given their current lack of elemental powers, and the Greg Weisman levels of battering the Toa have gotten in this arc. But I understand that such a move might have seemed cheap. Anyway, the Bohrok Call beat the Exo-Toa, and prepare to place the Nuva symbols onto something called the Nuva Cube, which will free Kodak and Godok from their prison. The Call are so absorbed into their task that they don't even notice the Toa swarming them, and with not a lot of options available, Tahu calls upon the Kanoi Vahi, the Mask of Time. As is explained later, and in the books, Tahu was given this mask by Turaga Vakama in case the Toa were to need it. However, in the books, Tahu was also ordered not to tell the other Toa about this mask, thus the shock from everyone else. Gali expresses concern about him possibly undoing all of reality if he can't handle it properly, but it's not like they have many other options at this point. So Tahu uses its power to slow down time around the Bohrok Call to a crawl. But he can't do it for long, so the Toa have to hurry up and get their symbols back. However, before they can do that, the Karana Call all turns silver, which creates a sort of force field around them that nothing can penetrate. With this, the situation seems hopeless. It's over. We failed. Failed our villages. Our people. No, we haven't. Remember, the Matoran were right. There is a link between the Toa Nuva symbols and ourselves. Our powers. If the essence of our powers is hosted in those symbols, maybe we can use that against the Bohrok Call. We need to pool our willpower and reach out to our symbols, even if it means freeing the Call from the power of the Vahi. Concentrate. We must break through.
What is happening? I feel more powerful. Stronger! The Toa Nuva symbols are feeding us energy. Yes, Kodak and Godok do not need the swarms. With this power, we can return Matanui to the before time. We will rule beside the Bohrok. No! Too much power! Can't control! You fools! You have been tricked!
Yes, you wanted our power, monsters. Now let's see if you can handle it.
So much power! Can't control my energies! Gravity! Crushing me! Bohrok! Aid us! Before it is too late! I will contain this power! I am Bohrok! I cannot be defeated! No! The Bohrok will be free! You cannot defeat me with my own power! Oh no.
The Bohrok Call. Are they? They did not live as we understand life, so they cannot die. Yeah, great way to get a gruesome murder past the Toa Code. Then again, I do have a questionable instance under my belt, so who am I to complain? Anyway, Kopaka asks how Gali knew that would work, and Gali just straight up says that she didn't. She just gambled that would. We also got that brief explanation of where Tahu got the Vahi from, and we see that their powers have returned as Kopaka builds them a spiraling staircase. Out of ice. Watch your step, I guess. And so the Toa get a few weeks of rest until the coming events of the Mask of Light movie take place. And we get to see an old enemy come back.
So, again, the prophecies of the Matoran oppose my will. I set the Rahi against them. I unleashed the Bohrok swarms, but still they refuse to break. Now, Their unity will be poisoned, their duty broken, their destiny shattered. Go, my sons, my Rakshi. Use the shadows and keep my brother asleep.
And that is where we will end for now, since after this we get into Mask of Light territory. Overall, the Bohrok saga as a whole is a classic, but not one without flaws.
Now, I mainly speak towards the last half on that flaws bit, as the first part does a good job maintaining the developments of the previous year. We see a team refined to the point where sticking points of the previous year, like the Toa sticking together, are no longer an issue. They are physically separate, but mentally, they are united. Kodak and Godok are also interesting enemies that bring up many questions, like how the Toa and the Bohrok are supposedly brothers of some sort. And then of course we have that awesome finale with the Toa achieving new forms of power. The Bohrok Call arc is also built on a very solid premise. The Toa are robbed of their elemental powers and have to depend on each other more than ever. Heck, the Bohrok Call themselves are kinda solid, constantly mocking how inferior the Toa supposedly are to them, in a way that reflects the Bohrok Queens pretty nicely. They don't get much beyond that, but sometimes you don't need it. Where the arc falls a bit flat, though, is in the Toa regressing. Admittedly, one person I talked to on a Discord server about it noted that C.A. Hapka, the writer of the 2003 books, might have used the then-current comics to inform how the Toa were written in the first two books. But even the books have this problem of regression, especially since in Menog, Kopaka does note a conflict having happened in the past between him and Tahu, thus meaning that this conflict was not only present before the 2003 books, but as the dialogue infers, it was already settled by then. Bionicle does have a bit of liquid canon at some points, where one version of an event can take place instead of another, depending on personal preference, before meeting back up and becoming one stream again. But this just doesn't jive with me. With the exception, of course, of one story in Tales of the Masks, that actually gave closure to the whole Tahu not trusting Liwa due to Bohrok possession thread from 2002. If we had gotten more writing like that in this storyline, it would be much improved. However, from a casual basis, I do have fun with the entire Bohrok saga, and can recommend it.
That is 2 months I just spent looking at Bionicle comics. And much as I'd like to dive into some more, seems I've got a package at my door. That unintentionally rhymed. I'm Bento Fire, signing out.
In a time before time, in a world you've only imagined, a shadow will be cast. A hero will be chosen, and a great adventure will come to light. Bionicle, Mask of Light, the movie.